What's up?
How you doing?
I'm doing good. What are you doing with that hat?
I just found it in the car.
It's like 110-degree heat index right now.
I just found it in the car. I thought it looked cool.
Cool.
Bringing the winter back. Keep it real.
Welcome to number 14. This is actually the most boring episode in the history of SmackTalk and the longest episode. I mean, I don't know yet how long it's going to be, but it's certainly well over an hour, like an hour and 25 minutes or something ridiculous.
Nice job.
So the high def version is really not true high def because we have to compress this thing. This is like huge, long.
A little bit.
And Bobby will not be in it. He's just being
That's
a
why
slacker.
That's why I put the hat on.
Yeah, he doesn't want to do video. He doesn't want to do anything. He just wants to collect a check. But
yeah.
the check is so large.
Oh
so
yeah,
big.
it's crazy.
But anyway, we're going to talk about V-bars for number 14. That's it. I'm going to talk to you guys about everything that has to do with the V-bars from beginning to end.
Cool.
Then next time around, we're going to be doing video from 3D Masters, which would be kind of cool. And then Bobby's going to do a video about the Futaba
750. CGY 750.
CGY 750.
And are you going to be in that one, or are you going to go rogue?
No, that one you're doing yourself.
Are you going to go rogue?
I'm paying my dues with the V-bar one. So
fair enough.
Yeah.
Fair enough.
Right.
Well, should be exciting. I'm looking forward to learning about the V-bar.
Yeah, I'm sure.
Something I've always wanted to learn about.
I'm looking forward to learning from the 750. So.
Good. I hope so. I hope it works for you.
Enjoy.
Hope you enjoy something.
Today, believe it or not, we're going to be talking about V-bar. We're going to spend a full episode talking about the V-bar. Why? Well, I think this is kind of important. A lot of people ask questions all the time. Well, you know, how does the V-bar fly? What do you recommend for Flybarless systems? Basically, I went out and I bought at full retail price, by the way, a V-bar several months ago. For the record, I'm not being paid to promote the V-bar or anything like that. I did buy one unit months ago and I flew it and I immediately fell in love with it. This system is relatively easy to use, but it has a lot of features. And with that being said, I'm not going to be able to cover every single little piece and bit of information and the span of this video. However, there's resources out on the internet that will help you set this up. For example, Frederick, my friend Frederick, he goes by Mr. Mel. He has numerous videos explaining how to set up a V-bar. So if you search for him on some of the forums or even on YouTube, you will find his YouTube channel. I will show the URL here on screen. And if you visit youtube.com and search for his channel, you will be able to find a lot of instructional videos made by him. And he explains very well in detail everything that relates to the V-bar. So let's talk a little bit about V-bar. What are the pros of the V-bar? Well, first of all, V-bar comes in two different flavors right now. They have the mini V-bar, which retails right now in the US for $299.99, and then they have the full-size V-bar, which retails for $319.99. Mikado, the company that manufactures the V-bar, is the pioneer company that pretty much introduced the Flybarless control system out to the market years ago. I don't have specific details as to when the first V-bar came out or anything like that, but I know for a fact that Mikado was the very, very first company that actually developed a Flybarless control system. So they do have more experience when it comes to making these Flybarless systems than anybody else for that matter. So the V-bar has a lot of good features. One of the first feature, most important to me, is that it has a very positive feel in the air. With that, what I mean by that is that the minute you install the V-bar on your helicopter and you go fly, you take off, you start flying around, you feel connected to the helicopter. It feels very natural. It doesn't have any bad tendencies. It does exactly as you tell it to do. Your stick inputs translate into the helicopter exactly the way they're meant to translate. There's no weirdness. I remember years ago, not even years ago, yeah, a couple of years ago, starting to test Flybarless systems myself. I run into a few units that had some really weird tendencies in the air. I was flying around and all of a sudden a helicopter would just do something that was totally not expected. The V-bar doesn't have that. It has a very precise, very predictable feel throughout the flight. Another great feature is that the features themselves. The unit has a lot of features. You can choose to use them, you can choose not to. It's completely up to you. But if you want to get creative, you can do a lot of things with the software. It has a governor built in, and this is a great feature. I know the Futaba 750 has a governor as well, and it just, the ability to have a governor built into the Flybarless control system is great for obvious reasons. Another great thing that the V-bar has is that it not only has a governor feature built in, but it also is capable of governing the head speed on an electric helicopter. It has an electric governor as well, in addition to a nitro governor. And you might be asking yourselves, why an electric governor? Well, there's great speed controllers out there like the Castle Creations ICE line and like the Contronic Jive line, and they all have really good governor modes. But there's also other speed controllers out there like the Align speed controller and others like that just don't have a good governor mode. Well, what you do there is you set the speed controller to airplane mode and you set it to the highest acceleration, no governor, and then you enable the V-bar governor. And the V-bar governor is just awesome. Like, I've been flying it recently and I just honestly, there is no other governor out there that performs as well as this, at least for now. Another feature that the V-bar has is it has a paddle simulation. Paddle simulation basically simulates the response that a Flybar helicopter has when you bang the sticks really fast off center. And this is something that I was digging on the V-bar because no other Flybarless system even to today has this ability. And me being a Flybar guy, I like that quick response off center and that quick pop that the Flybar helicopter had. And the V-bar with the paddle simulation feature gives you that. So that's awesome. Another great feature is banks. Banks is a feature that the V-bar has that allows you to set up multiple different configurations in the software, and you can just basically flip the switch on the radio and have a completely different setup altogether in your helicopter. So that is really, really great. Another feature is the V-bar can work as a receiver if you have a Spectrum or JR radio. Basically, you take your satellite antennas, your satellite receivers from Spectrum or JR, you plug them directly into your V-bar, and your V-bar becomes your receiver if you fly Spectrum or JR. It is also compatible with S-Bus. So if you're a Futaba guy, one cable, plug it into the V-bar, off you go. So that's also another great feature. It has a great street price, of course, very, very competitive out there. And then another thing is the great form factor. If you have a little 250 or a 450 size machine, you get the mini V-bar. It has the sensor built into the actual unit itself. And it's a very, very small unit. If you have a bigger machine and you want like more ports and you want the ability to have a sensor that is separate from the control unit, then you get the full-size V-bar. So, wow, a lot of features to talk about here. So the only disadvantage that actually doesn't bother me, but I've heard a lot of people talk about, well, I need a computer to use the V-bar. True. You do need a computer, either a computer or this programmer right here. You can get this from Mikado as well. So if you're at the field, you don't really need a computer. You can plug this in to your V-bar and make changes on the fly. But yes, you do need to have either this interface or you need to have a computer to be able to use it. Another complaint that I receive, so another con I guess you could say, is the fact that it comes with a very basic type of software called Express, and if you want to unleash all the features of the true features of the VBar, you have to pay an additional $45 to be able to unlock the Pro version of the software. So you might want to consider the $45 as part of your initial investment, because you'll definitely want to get the Pro after you get this thing set up and going. Okay, here we have the two V-bars that are currently available for sale. We have the Mini V-bar. The Mini V-bar Mikado recommends for small electric helicopters. However, I have successfully run the Mini V-bar on large electrics, including a 700 size electric. And then of course the full-size V-bar. Full-size V-bar is recommended for any model, nitro or electric, but it was specifically designed for nitro. The full-size V-bar's got a separate sensor and a control unit, whereas the Mini V-bar has the sensor and the control unit all in one. There's other differences, of course, and I'm going to talk about those briefly as well. So let's start with the Mini V-bar. I'm going to show you the box contents. And this is the actual unit right here. As you can see, it's pretty small. Very, very small unit. You can pretty much install this on any electric helicopter. It's great for like a little machine like a T-Rex 450. Very, very compact. As you open the box, it comes with a USB cable for your computer connection. It comes with several different male-to-male connectors. We'll get to that later, but that's basically when you're running a separate receiver. You'll need these to connect your receiver to the V-bar. Comes with some tape, gyro mounting tape, as well as instruction manual and the actual software in this disc, and then a quick start guide for the VBar Express software. Here's the full-size V-bar, and this is a little bit different packaging, but as you can see here, you have a control unit and you have a sensor, and they're separate. And in this package you also get, of course, your USB cable, you get your gyro mounting tape, you get your male-to-male plugs, and then of course you get your software, and you also get the VBar Express quick start guide. VBar Express is the software that comes with these controllers. Both the VBar, full-size VBar, as well as the Mini VBar. These two guys here come with VBar Express software. The Express software is I guess you could say, a entry-level version of the VBar software. It is great for those of you who have not played with VBars yet. Very easy to set up. I'm going to show you how to set them up, and it is definitely something that you have to try at first. However, Mikado offers a Pro version of the software that opens up a lot of new features. I'm going to talk about that as well. A lot of people say, well, if I get a VBar, does that mean that I need a computer? Yes, you do. It is highly recommended that you use a computer to set it up. In fact, I believe that's the only way in which you can set up the VBar for the first time. However, once you got your system set up, if you go out to the flying field and you need to make quick changes, you can get one of these guys right here. Now, these controllers allow you to plug, basically you plug this into your VBar, and then you can make changes on the fly while you're at the field. You can change anything virtually on your VBar system with this device. Okay, here we have the Mini VBar, and it is important to make mention here that there are several different ways in which you guys can plug this in. Configurations can be drastically different. For example, if you have a Futaba transmitter, you can use a Futaba receiver, and you can plug this into your receiver using the male-to-male wires, connectors that I showed you came in the box. So for example, here's my buddy's
Ernie's from Ready Heli's little test rig thing here. As you can see here, this is an old black edition V-bar, and it is plugged to a receiver, connected to a receiver using the male-to-male plugs. This is a Spectrum receiver. This is redundant. There is no reason why you would ever want to do this. Why? Because the new V-bars that I just showed you, the mini V-bar as well as the full-size V-bar, these two guys right here, they are capable of working as your receiver. So if you're flying Spectrum or JR, whether it is the SM2 or the SMX, all you do is you plug the satellite antennas, the satellite receivers, to the V-bars themselves, and they work as your receiver. However, if you have Futaba and you don't have a Futaba S-Bus compatible receiver, this is how you would plug it, make your connections. You would plug in the male-to-male wires from your receiver to your V-bar, and then you would plug your servos into your V-bar. V-bars nowadays also accept S-Bus. And with that being said, if you have a Futaba S-Bus receiver, you can just simply connect the S-Bus wire to your V-bar and off you go. For demonstration purposes here, I am using a DX8, Spectrum DX8, running on the SM2, and therefore I am going to plug satellite antennas directly to the V-bar. So let's go ahead and start with the Mini right here. The way in which they both set up, it's nearly identical. The full size has more ports, has more capabilities. It has a nitro governor function as well, but they both operate almost in the same way. One thing that is extremely important that I see people do all the time is, and they end up blowing up their V-bars, is if you have a full-size V-bar, make sure you don't plug any source of power on this side. And you will see as it is labeled, this is the side where you plug your sensors, your actual V-bar sensor and your governor sensor. You do not want to plug anything that has power through on this side. You want it on this side. So we're going to play with the Mini first. So first thing you do before you start your setup is you take your Mini V-bar, and again I'm going to use Spectrum. So I'm going to plug a Spectrum satellite to one of the satellite ports, and both of these units, the Mini as well as the full size, they both have 2 ports for satellite receivers. Mikado recommends using 2 satellite receivers. I always use 2. The only exception to that is on my little stuff like the 250 and the 450, where I only use 1 receiver. But on everything else I use 2 receivers. I'm only going to use 1 right now just to demonstrate, of course. And then, so you plug that in, then you take a battery or you plug it into your battery power source on your helicopter. I'm going to plug in through port RXB. As you can see, the V-bar powers up. Next thing you do is you take the USB cord that came with in your package, and you plug that into your V-bar. There we go. And then you plug it into your computer. And let's go ahead and open up the computer software here. Okay, so here we have the software on the computer installed. As you can see, I'm using a Mac computer. You can install the software from the disk that came with your V-bar, or you can go to vstabi.info. That is vstabi.info, and you can download it from there. Believe it or not, software is available for Windows as well as Mac, which is great. So here's our first screen. I'm going to go ahead and click on Setup. That is the very first thing you need to do. And as you can see here, it says Express, meaning we're on the Express version of the software. All V-bars ship with the Express version of the software, and I'm going to explain the differences. But here we go. We're going to click on Setup, and then here's the very first screen. it puts you a start. Every one of these screens, you have 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 12, 14 screens. Each one of these screens represent a different section of the setup, and you have to complete this setup from beginning to end in order to ensure that your system is going to fly well and it's not going to crash your machine. So every one of these screens has a little wording explaining what each one of these features is. It's pretty intuitive, actually. It's very easy to use. So first thing we do is we're going to go ahead and click on where it says Create New 5.0 Express Setup. Click on it, click OK, and now it takes us to the VBar hookup screen. And this is what I was talking to you about here a minute ago. There's several different ways to hook this up. Here, as you can see, there's a drop-down menu. The default says separate channels, standard, RX hookup. There's all these different ways. We have Spectrum, Satellites, Digital Center, and this is a system, a special sort of mode that VBar offers for Spectrum users that allows for much better centering on your servos. Then you have the regular Spectrum satellites, 1 or 2, meaning you either have 1 or 2 satellites, but again, Mikado encourages everyone to use 2 satellites. And this basically, Spectrum satellites 1 and 2, or 2, allows you to have a 22 millisecond 1048 connection to the VBar. Then you have the Spectrum satellites high res at the very bottom here. This one allows you to use the faster rate of 11 milliseconds with the higher resolution of 2048. This is what I run. Mikado does not recommend to use this mode. They have experienced some issues here and there. I have personally successfully run this for several months and never had an issue. So if you're in doubt and you're not comfortable running this, please select Spectrum Satellites 1 or 2 or Spectrum Satellites Digital Center. And then as you can see here, you have a Futaba S-Bus, and you have a Futaba single line, and then you have a multiplex M-Link. So there's a lot of different ways to set this up. I'm going to keep it on high res. So once I'm here, what I do is I take my DX8 and I make sure that I create a model. And that model that I create is going to be a very basic model. It's going to be set up for 1 servo. So no CCPM mixing of any kind. You would have to do the same with Futaba, of course. And then you simply make sure that all your radio features or settings are at default. So all your trims are centered, your sub trims are centered, your endpoints or ATVs are at 100 and 100, which is default. You make sure you don't have any revo mixing or anything special like that. Once you're done with that, in my case here with Spectrum, what I do is I push the bind button, and after I push the bind button, I have to cycle the power very quickly on and off on the VBar. So, and it has to be done quickly. So I unplug, plug back in. As you can see, I'm in bind mode now, shown by my satellite antenna and my receiver and my actual VBar blinking. So I take my transmitter and I follow the normal procedure of turning it on, holding the bind button here. Hold the bind button, turn it on, and the transmitter correction. And the transmitter will say binding 2048 11 milliseconds because it's high res mode. And now I am bound to the VBar. So once we're here, what we do is this screen is going to show us what our channel, I guess you could say, channel allocations is. So we have collective on channel 6. So I move the collective up and down. We see that changing. The throttle is channel 1. I move the collective again, make sure that works. See, tail is channel 4. I move left and right. I see that's working. Aileron is channel 2. I move aileron and that moves. Elevator and so forth. Make sure everything's working good here, and then you click on continue. And on this screen, basically, what you do is you tell the VBar where centering is and where is the maximum throw for each one of these 4 channels: aileron, elevator, rudder, and collective. I get a lot of questions about this.
What's going on with this? Well, this is simple. Every radio is calibrated differently. Every transmitter has a totally different calibration and has a different way to send a signal to the receivers or other devices. Here, we're actually adjusting the radio to where the V-bar wants to see center, where the V-bar wants to see maximum throw for each one of these channels. So first thing we do here is we move the aileron stick right and left on the transmitter, and we make sure it's moving in the correct direction. As you can see, it's backwards. When I'm moving my transmitter stick to the right, aileron says left. When I move it left, aileron says right. So we have to reverse aileron. Let's check the other ones. Elevator, pull and push. That is just fine. We don't have to reverse that. Rudder, right and left. As you can see, that is wrong also. So we have to reverse rudder. And finally, collective, positive and negative. So that is good. So you go into the transmitter, and we're going to go to the reverse menu, and we're going to reverse the aileron. So we're going to take aileron and we're going to reverse it, and then we're going to go ahead and go to the rudder and we're going to reverse it. Done. Once we've done that, we verify that the directions are working correctly. So collective, positive, negative, rudder, left and right, elevator, pull and push, aileron, right and left. Okay, the next step here is to go to the radio sub-trim setting. And as you can see here, we have a 1, a -2, -3, 0. The goal here is for all these to be at 0. So first thing we do is we're going to go to the aileron sub-trim on the transmitter. And I'm going to start moving the aileron sub-trim setting here in the transmitter, and I'm going to watch that 1. See, it's going to 3, so I'm actually going the wrong way. There we go. Now we're at 0. So then we're going to move to the elevator and repeat the same process. I'm going to start feeding sub-trim in one direction, going the wrong direction, so moving back until it's 0. We're basically telling the radio where the V-bar wants 0 to be. And then we repeat the same process for rudder. There we go. And then for collective, we just make sure our stick is right at center. That is center stick for me. So I'm going to go to the pitch channel, and I'm going to start adjusting until I get to 0. Alright, so now we have all these numbers here at 0, which is perfect. The next thing we need to do is we need to make sure that when we move these sticks on the radio that we're going to 100% both ways. So I'm going to move aileron first. Full right, it's only 98. Full left, it's 101. So we need to fix that. So what we do here is we go to travel adjustments. We start with aileron, and we move the aileron here. Full right aileron, okay? And then it's 98, so we feed a little more here, 100. Move left, it's 101, so we remove some, down to 100. Then we repeat the same process for the elevator. Pull back, see it's only 97, so I'm going to add a little endpoint positive. Pushing elevator is good, then we move to rudder. I'll go full right rudder, a little too much. There we go. Add a little more on the left rudder. And then finally, pitch. Full pitch, 100. Full negative, only 96. So we're going to add a little more. It's a little too much. There we go. So once you have all this adjusted and everything reads 0, and you have the right directions, full positive, correction, full stick deflection gives you 100. Full stick deflection in the other direction also gives you 100, and all these numbers are at 0. And as you can see, they're kind of moving a little bit. The DX8 has very, very, very sensitive pods. But you know, as long as you're really close, I'm going to make a little change here to correct this little issue here with the aileron, and make sure that I'm back at 0. You know, and unfortunately, every time you make a change to your sub trim, you need to go over your
your endpoints again, because as you move the sub trims, you're changing the endpoints. But once everything here is 0, which is the case right now, you click on set center, and then that's going to record the center on the V-bar for all these settings. And then once that's done, the V-bar is going to initialize again. Here we go. Now we're ready to go. Then everything else from here is really, really simple. So we click on continue, and then here it's very, very simple. It basically asks you which way you're installing your sensor. You know, whether you're installing it with the V-bar, you know, the lettering facing up or the lettering facing down, whether the wires of the V-bar are coming off the front or the back. So we're going to leave it like this, just for demonstration purposes. We click continue. Another easy screen. Main rotor direction, well, we know it's going clockwise. I mean, this is probably going to be the case for 99% of you guys. Only the huge giant scale guys that are flying Varios and helicopters like that will see counterclockwise. So we click on continue, and then this is the swash blade type. Okay, for example, on a T-Rex 700E, this is the configuration. You have 2 servos in the front of the helicopter, your elevator servos in the back. If I had, for example, a T-Rex 700 Nitro, I would go to this, because the T-Rex 700 Nitro has 2 servos in the back, 1 servo in the front, and so forth. The Logo 600 is HR3. It's this configuration. So while you're doing this and you're selecting this, what you need to do here is pay attention to these little signs right here. It's telling you which channel you have to plug the V-bar into. So for example, on HR3, which is the case of the Logo 600 here, channel 1 is going to be your elevator servo that it's in the rear of the helicopter. You plug into the channel 1 on the V-bar. The servo that's on the left hand side in the front of your helicopter will plug into channel 2 on the V-bar. And then the servo that's on the right side of the helicopter in the front will plug into channel 3. So make sure that when you do that you have it plugged in correctly. This is very important here. Then you move on to the next screen, and then again another simple screen. It is asking you which way creates positive pitch, swash up or swash down. On the Logo 600, as well as on all the T-Rex helicopters, swash up is positive pitch. On Raptors, for example, swash down right here would be positive pitch. But I'm going to set this up on a T-Rex or a Logo, so I'm leaving it here for now. Hit continue. And then this is a very important section here. Again, this is showing you all the servos, showing you how the servos are laid out. And then in this particular part of the setup is where you actually determine which way your servos are moving. Basically what you do is you look at your swash plate here, and you start moving your swash plate. Basically move it up and down, collective. So you just basically apply positive and negative collective. And you look at your swash plate, and if you see that a servo is not moving in the right direction, you reverse it. Just click on the servo. So for example, let's say that servo number 2 is moving in the wrong direction. The servo in the front left, you just click on it. It'll ask you to change. If you confirm to change the direction, click OK. Now you change the direction to normal from reverse. And once you get all this changed around, you should finally get a setting where positive raises the swash, negative lowers the swash. At the same time, you can verify that your right aileron moves the swash to the right, left aileron moves the swash to the left, and elevator, of course, back elevator moves the swash back, and forward elevator moves the swash forward. So once you're done with this, I'll click continue. And then here is where you actually can take the luxury to make trim changes to your helicopter. So you can actually trim your servos independently. Channel 1, Channel 2, as well as Channel 3. Of course, keep in mind, if you're doing a setup that is very, I guess you could say, mechanically sound, you should need basically no adjustment here. You know, I see a lot of people that have their servo wheels, servo horns not centered at all, and then they use these settings to center everything. You can do that. There's nothing wrong with that. You know, I've seen people that have these sliders like way up on one servo because the servo wheel was way off and they adjusted it here. My setups are usually pretty close to center because everything is adjusted mechanically the best it can. On this other tab that says swash, you can achieve the same results. Actually, here's where you actually move to swash. So here we'll give you forward swash, here we'll give you backward swash, here we'll give you right swash, left swash. This moves it more than this, so you have a smaller range of travel and a bigger range of travel. And then here you can move collective up. So let's say that you're not at 0 degrees right now, you're at -2. You can add positive collective to bring that up to 0 degrees. So once this is all taken care of, click continue. And now we go to the collective screen. This is very, very self-explanatory. This is very, very simple. Basically, all you do here is you put a pitch gauge on your helicopter and you measure your positive and negative, and you adjust the slider to achieve the travel that you want. I know, for example, that like on my Logo 600, I'm at 107, and I believe that's about 14 degrees. So just set it to your preference, you know, anywhere between 10 and 14 degrees, depending on your skill level. Then you click on continue, and then we get to the cyclic throw screen. Now this is interesting here. I've had a lot of people ask me questions about this. Basically what you're doing here is you're telling the VBar where the cyclic stands. You're not increasing or decreasing your cyclic throw. All you're doing is just telling the VBar where your radio is supposed to be, where your pitch is supposed to be. So for example, you go to the measure. Right now, if you look at your read your pitch on your blades, you should be at 0 degrees. There's absolutely no question about it. You should be at 0 degrees because when we were in the previous screen, you already trimmed and configured everything to be at 0 degrees right now. So what you do is you click on measure, and this changes the pitch on the blades automatically to 8 degrees. Now, you move the slider up and down, and that will adjust your actual cyclic throw until you can read 8 degrees. Remember, your blades need to be facing forwards and back from the helicopter. In other words, they need to be aligned with the boom. And you need to be reading your pitch from the front of your helicopter because you're reading cyclic pitch, not collective pitch. So once you have a good read on this, make sure that you're reading 8 degrees. So a lot of the times this will have to be adjusted. I've seen this as low as 80 and as high as 110, depending on how much resolution your helicopter has mechanically. Once this is set, you click on continue, and now we go to the tail screen. First, most important here, you select the type of servo you have. I always fly JR servos, so I'm going to go ahead and select the first setting, which is the 9254, 9257 Savox, and JR 8900. Once I'm done with that, then what I do is I verify my servo direction. So I move my rudder stick left and right, and I make sure it's moving in the right direction. And then if not, then all I have to do is reverse it here. Okay. Once I get that figured out, I move full rudder to the left. This section of the screen becomes highlighted, and then I move this slider left and right until I get the maximum throw on my tail slider going left, and I do the same to the right. I move this slider until I get the maximum throw on the tail going right. These numbers are supposed to be around the 100 range. I've seen them as low as 30, seen them as high as 140. You know, the closer to the 100, the better. You know, if the number is too low, it means you don't have enough tail resolution. Try to move your servo horn closer into the servo for less throw so that these numbers go up. If these numbers are too high, try to move your ball link a little bit away from the servo to bring these numbers down. But the VBar, all in all, is actually a great system. It's very forgiving. If these numbers are not where they need to be, it'll still work just fine. So at this point, you can see that up here I have a Governor 1 and Governor 2 screens. This is not available in the Express software. So I'm going to click on Finish, and I'm done. Now the helicopter setup is complete. As you can see here, we have a gyro gain. This gyro gain at this point is tied into your radio. So if you want to know on what channel this is, you go back to Setup, be careful not to click on create new setup. Simply go to where it says receiver right here on the left, or click continue here, and then as you can see the aux gyro is on channel 5, and on my DX8 channel 5 I believe is the gear channel. So I'm going to my gyro screen right now, and I'm going to set it up to the gyro screen, and I'm going to create a number here and move this. Yep, and it is moving indeed. So let's go ahead and go back to the main screen. You have to actually go to the very end, scroll through all these functions until you exit. As you can see here, gyro gain is pretty low. It's at 50%. And Mikado gives you a reference here, what gyro gain you should be at for logos and T-Rexes and all kinds of stuff. So I'm going to go ahead and bump this on the radio until I can get to approximately what I want. I want about 80. That's a good starting point for a Logo 600. Then on the left hand side I have the main rotor style and the gyro gain. The style determines how the helicopter feels in flight. Precise is actually very, very precise, like the word says. It feels very locked in. Vivid is very, very radically fast. And as you can see, it tells you what it does, what each one of these do when you move the mouse over it. I'm going to go to Vivid here. And then gyro gain. Again, Mikado is pretty good at telling you where the gain should be. So I'm going to go to about 90, which is what it recommends for a Logo 600. This is all you have for setup on the express version of the VBar.
And now, ladies and gentlemen, it's time for another really big show.
Dr. Wynn!
The one, the only, the original Dr. Wynn.
My insides hurt.
Oh yeah, it's time to call the doctor.
Hello? Hello, it's Dr. Wing again. We even got some more questions. So, guess I better get to them first. But I have to have a little sip of a little cocktail. Oh, damn, that's good. Okay, comes question number 1. Dear Dr. Wing, what? I can't even say the Lagahista Johnson from Baltimore, Maryland. What the fuck is this? I got 2 questions. What area of medicine did you get a degree in? And where did you study? That's number 1. Also, I actually wanted to fly if your wing fast enough. Thanks for your time. What a fucking name this guy is. Medicine. The area of medicine. I was a gynecologist. Where did you study? I better not tell you. I could say worse, but I'm gonna keep it clean on this one. And actually, fly if your flap wing flies fast enough. It flies fast enough. You dickhead. What a fucking asshole, Baltimore. Glad I don't know. I only know one other dickhead that I know from Baltimore. Asshole. What a dick he is. That's number 1. Here we go for number 2. I can't wait till this says now. This is Keith from New York. Dear Doc Wing, I went out and brought a Blade MCPX after watching the episode about micros. I'm having a lot of issues trying to keep it here. Why is this thing so hard to fly, and what's your opinion on micros? They're pieces of shit. The waste of money. And if I had one, I'd pee on it right now. Because I hate them little fucking things. Because all the little bolts and all the screws, no way. 600 or better. End of story. Keith. Fucking micros, pieces of shit. Okay, now we're at question number 3. Last one. Anonymous. So this is really going to be fucking good. Oh, this is a good one. Nobody seems to like me. I don't know why. Even the dogs are pissing on my feet. Even my girlfriend shows status single on Facebook. I'm such an outcast. Are you fucking kidding me? A dog pissing on your feet? What a dick his guy is. I wonder if he humps dogs. Maybe that's the reason he's got like dog humper smell on him or something. I don't know. Well, the next one is, I'm a nice guy. I have a lot of experience in many different jobs. I'm willing to help anyone with anything. Please help me. What can I do to get people to like me? And do you think a different hair gel would help? Okay, Mr. Anonymous, you fucking douchebag. Yeah, she's single. Well, maybe the first thing you ought to do is take a fucking bath. That's the first thing. And then take your clothes and, like, if you have like a barbecue outside, just torch the shit out of them and go buy some new clothes. That's only a couple things. I can go on and on and on and on. But you know what? I bet you when you were a little kid, you had a lot of fucking pimples. You probably got acne all over your fucking face. I still can't believe the dog's pissing your feet. I'm an old bastard. I ain't never had a dog piss on my feet. So evidently you got some dog scunguli or something on your legs. I don't know. And as far as your girlfriend's single status, you got a fucking problem, buddy. She's out porking somebody. Hair gel? Why don't you just shave your head off? Don't even worry about no gel. So, maybe if you went home, you took a freaking bath, got some new clothes, take out your single wife or girlfriend, whatever you want to call her, get her drunk, go have some fun, baby. Well, that's the third and final question for this episode. So, if you'd like to, please go to the website and any listening suggestions or questions you got for me, because I'm willing and waiting. See ya.
Okay, guys, so let's talk about Express versus Pro. The Pro software opens up a lot of features. And the way that you actually have to buy it is $45. The way you do that is, if you had Windows, right here you would see your normal file, edit, and all that kind of stuff. Buttons. I'm on Mac, so it's outside the screen at the very top. But basically, you go to, I believe it's the File menu, and then you click on Online Update. And this VBar software little dialog here will open up, and it'll take a couple of seconds here. It's reading the serial number, it's checking the version, it's giving me the version. All the Express right now is shipping with version 5. The Pro is actually version 5.1. And it only gives you new features because it's Pro, but it's also giving you new features because it's actually 5.1. So the way to do this is you would actually highlight this, and then you would go to where it says Infos, and then that will open up a page on your browser, and it'll guide you through what you need to do to upgrade. Basically, you just purchase it, you follow the screenshots where it says purchase, and you follow all the stuff online and make the purchase for $45. And then the system will eventually know that this serial number 15100 is 7235 has purchased the Pro version, and the next time you come into the same dialog here where you go on File and click on File and then Online Update, it'll actually allow you, it'll have this load button here enabled. So you select this and then you click on load, and it'll actually load 5.1 Pro Actually, the latest is as of the making of this video is 5.1.8 Pro. So we're going to go ahead and for demonstration purposes, I'm not going to purchase it. I'm going to actually plug in a VBar that has that version already enabled. Okay, this is the actual main screen of the Pro software. So once you complete your upgrade, you make the purchase online, you pay the $45, and you come back and you load it, and it pushes the new software to the VBar. This is the main screen you end up with. As you can see, you have a lot more stuff going on in the main screen. If you click on Setup, the setup screens are actually identical. Nothing really changes here. The main difference is it opens up a few options. As you can see, you have a smiley face, and then you have like a little whatever that is right there. If you click on that, then you can change advanced parameters for certain screens. So every time you see a smiley face, it means easy setup, and then every time you click on the other icon, it gives you the more advanced options. Other than that, you know, like I said, the setup screens are all the same. You have the same features here. You have your servo centering, your swash, just like on the Express version. Same collective throw, same cyclic measure 8-degree screen, same tail screen. Now you also have a governor, and there is a governor as of right now. As far as I'm aware, there's only governor function available on the full-size VBar. The mini VBar apparently either already has or will shortly have a governor function also for electrics. However, the full-size VBar has governor function for electrics as well as nitro. Let me exit this. I'm back to the main screen. First, we have our main rotor style. If you remember before on the Express, you had precise, medium, and vivid. You still have that here, but instead of pushing or clicking on the style you want, now you have a slider that changes it from vivid all the way down into number 40 to precise, which is 120, and you can play with this slider in between. I personally prefer vivid because I'm a Heart 3D type of guy, so that's where I have mine. Agility is something we don't have on Express, and again, it tells you what it is when you move your mouse over it. But basically, the agility is what determines how fast your cyclic response is. As you can see here, this is my logo 600 setup. My agility is 110. And you know, you can go really slow down to 60 like it says there for a scale type flight, or you can go really fast for 110 or actually even more. And I've noticed that even if you make a change here, say 140, and you click enter, it'll take it, even though the scale only goes to 120, but it will take that high value. Be very careful when running anything above 100 because your helicopter gets really fast. Now, gyro gain for the head, it's again here, just like on the Express. And then when you move to the tail side, you have your yaw rate, which is basically your pirouette speed, and you have your gyro gain. And this is what we control using the radio on the Express version. We control it now with the slider on the Pro version. So now, aside from all these features here, again, you have a smiley face, and then you have this little icon. If you click on it, it takes you to the main rotor advanced parameters. If you click the one on the side of the tail rotor, it takes you to the tail rotor advanced parameters. I'm going to talk about these very briefly. But basically, the RC deadband is how much input you can have on your stick before the input does anything. 3 is the default. I recommend leaving it there. The elevator precompensation. This is interesting. This is basically what compensates the elevator input. So when you're, for example, climbing from a hover, if the nose of the helicopter lifts up, then basically what you do, you increase this number to compensate for that effect. I've always left it at 10. Works awesome. This is my favorite feature here. This is available only with 5.1 Pro. It's a paddle simulation. I have a video on YouTube where I talk about it, but this actually made me fall in love with VBar because this accelerates. It actually wouldn't call it acceleration. This creates a faster response off center on hard cyclic inputs to the helicopter, and it almost makes it feel like a flybar in the sense that the response is there. There's very little lag, and it feels like it's just it allows you to pop, I guess you could say, the helicopter better. I fly it at 40 myself. The minimum value is 20. 0 will basically turn it off. You can go as high as 100 if you want, and I've tried it there, and let me tell you, it's not fun, so don't try to do it. 50% expo, that's your cyclic expo. And then you have your optimizers, and I'm going to talk about optimizers here in a minute. Let's move to the tail rotor side. On the tail rotor, you have, again, deadband. Does the same thing as the main rotor deadband. Leave it at 5, works well. Then you have your acceleration that determines how fast the tail accelerates, not your actual pyro speed, but how fast it accelerates with inputs. I bumped mine up to 65, I like it there. And then you have proportional gain and I gain, which is the integrated gain. These numbers, I would leave them alone. I bump them up a little bit. That's pretty much my taste. And then your stop gains. This is basically allowing you to have a quicker, crisper stop. I also bump them up to 35 from the default, but the default setting works well. Finally, the percentage of expo for the tail, 50% is the stock or default. I leave it there. Some people that want a faster tail response around center, they drop this down all the way down to 0. Some people increase it. If you're familiar with the way a Spartan gyro, tail gyro works, 50% is very similar to the natural feel of a Spartan gyro. 20 to 25% would be more natural, with the comparable to the feel of, say, for example, an aligned tail gyro, where the tail feels a little quicker off center. Then we have torque precompensation, and this is basically sort of like a revo mixing. What this does is this allows the V-bar to feed inputs to your tail based on either collective or cyclic. As soon as you hit, say, for example, full collective, your tail is going to feed some pitch ahead of time to compensate for torque. And then once the V-bar has a chance to realize whether that was too much or too little, it'll work from there. This actually helps quite a bit. I don't recommend changing them. If you change them in relatively small increments and play with it, but it works awesome in default, and I believe this is default right here. Then we have our zero collective, and then, you know, this is something that you really don't have to mess with. This is just basically reads the zero collective position on your transmitter. And then you have lock modes and rate modes. This is something you really don't need to play with either. This is for resetting your tail. You can set it to like rate mode, or you can set it to like a special sort of mode for little helicopters. If you click reset, it resets everything to default. I'm not going to do that. Same here on the main rotor side. If you click reset, it resets everything. Now, control loop, optimizers. Basically, this is something that tells the helicopter your flying style. And it'll actually explain to you here. It says this function will activate an automatic optimizer for the control loop. Basically says that it basically adjusts for the type of blades, the head speed, the weight, I mean all kinds of stuff. So what I recommend is that you turn this on for your main rotor and for your tail rotor, and you fly a helicopter several times. After you've flown about 10 to 15 times, you come back in here and you turn them off. This will learn to adapt to your flying style. It's basically looking at how fast you feed inputs, whether you use a lot of rights, a lot of lefts, you know, where your stick is right in relationship to left, and so forth. If you're a guy that does a lot of reversals and a lot of right and left aileron, back and forth elevator, and you use a lot of the flight envelope, you need a lot less flights to optimize to get the right optimization levels. Usually, I'm so used to the way the V-bar flies, I don't even turn them on anymore, but it's a really cool feature to have. Okay, let's talk a little bit here about the setup of the governor feature of the V-bar. First thing you do is you go to setup right here, and then you go to Gov1, and you're going to get to this screen right here. And again, as you can see on the left hand side, it gives you pretty good explanations to how everything works. But let's go ahead and set up a governor here for a nitro. You click on nitro, and then the first thing you do at this point is you click on reset. Now we have three different options here. Throttle input channel from receiver basically tells the V-bar where your throttle curve is. And since I'm running Spectrum, it's channel 1, ESC throttle. Then preset channel from receiver. This is the channel that is linked
to your governor screen on your transmitter. Since I'm running a DX8, it's linked to channel 7, which is aux2. And then finally, output socket on VBar. Here is where you select where you have plugged in your throttle servo. I have it plugged into the servo, no BEC, which is this one right here. After you've done this, you need to make sure that everything's working from -100 to +100. One thing that you can do is you can go back here to where it says transmitter, and then on the ESC throttle, you can make sure that this works all the way from -100 to +100. And in my particular situation here, that's not the case because I have trim. This governor has already been enabled. But basically, you need to make sure that you have -100 and that you can travel all the way here to +100. So, going back here, you click on continue, and that takes you to the next screen. Now, I get a lot of questions about this part right here. It says throttle servo adjustment. Well, here is where you tell the system the minimum and the maximum throw. So it's basically like your endpoint adjustments. It's kind of like what you do with the tail when you're in this screen and you adjust tail left and tail right. Same deal here for the throttle. So on your nitro, what you do is you go to throttle all the way down, practically trim down, throttle down, like throttle close, and then you start moving this until your carburetor barrel closes all the way. Then you open your throttle all the way up, fully open, and then you do the same here. You start moving this until your barrel is fully open on your carburetor. That sets your minimum and maximum throttle. Then here you select your head speed. For example, 2050 is what I have for my nitro for max. What max head speed means is that when the VBar sees an input of 100 or maximum that you can give it, is going to yield up to this RPM. And then finally your gear ratio. On this particular helicopter, my gear ratio is 8.2 to 1. Hit enter. And then we have auto rotation bailout mode. I'm going to talk about that here in a little bit. Finally, we have status, and then this is all kinds of cool stuff right here. It tells you if your failsafe is active, the ramp up limit, low limit. It's a lot of cool stuff going on here. As you can see here, my requested RPM is 1645 right now. If I go to idle up, my requested RPM is 2024, and so forth. So when you click on finish, get back to the main screen. Now you have a governor screen enabled here. And you have a gain, and then here and under the advanced options you have all these little features right here. The run up speed limit is what determines how fast your motor spools up, and it can go anywhere between 3 and you can go as high as 30 if you want. On nitro I like to do 30. Then you have a differential, integral, you have a bunch of stuff right here. You have cyclic add, which basically adds throttle automatically every time you add cyclic, and the same with collective. And then you have a minimum governor. This is a very important number here. -50 seems to work okay. This is how low the throttle can go on your governor. In other words, if you're in an overspeed condition and the governor feels like it has to close your throttle, this is how low it can close the throttle. So if you're overspeeding, you can increase this number. You can go, say, for example, -75% or so forth. So basically the way you control your head speed is by means of your governor channel on your transmitter. And once you set those numbers, you will see the requested RPM here, and then as the motor starts to spool up, the engine in this case, you'll see the current, and here you see the input from your throttle. Let's go ahead and play with the electric one. The electric one is really cool. It's actually easier to set up. So if you have a helicopter with an electric motor, for example, say that you have a speed controller like an aligned speed controller, and as we know, the aligned speed controller has a terrible governor mode. So what you do is you set your speed controller to airplane mode, and then you come in here and you set this to electric. You click reset, okay? And now you have two options here instead of three. The first option is where you tell the VBar where
the throttle signal is coming from. In this case, again, it's channel 1, ESC preset. That is the channel on the radio or the transmitter where the throttle curves are bound to. Second option is the output socket on VBar. This is where you're plugging in your ESC. Now be very careful here, as I explained earlier. You can't plug anything with power on this side of the VBar. You can only plug things with power on this side of the VBar. So I usually plug mine in on the collective ESC channel, which is right here. It's usually better. It avoids problems and so forth. So once you do this, you click on continue. And then we get to the Governor 2 screen. Here, we have this. I get a lot of questions about this. It says right here, throttle ESC output controlled by collective. What this means is, we're going to turn this on right now. Okay. What this means is that any input you give on your stick, on your transmitter at this point, is being sent to the VBar via the collective pitch on your transmitter. So every function of your radio that pertains to the throttle curves or the throttle endpoints or the throttle, for example, subtrims or anything that has to do with throttle is bypassed. Why do you want to do this? You do this because usually you have a perfectly linear collective curve and you can adjust your endpoints on your motor without having to modify your throttle curve to be linear. So here, since we have an electric, you have to be extremely careful with the electric. What I recommend you do is you loosen up the motor and you move it away from the gear so that there's no possible way for the helicopter to spool up. Keep in mind, when you do this, your helicopter will spool up and it could be very, very dangerous. So loosen up your motor, move it forward and away from your main gear. In fact, do that before you even come to the governor screen. Once you've done that and you make sure your radio is on an idle, you start moving this a little bit to the right until the motor starts to spool up. Once the motor starts to spool up, you back it off until the motor stops. And that determines your idle. Then you go to full throttle on your transmitter and you do the same on this side. At this point, your motor is fully spooled up, your electric motor. So you start moving this to the left until you hear a change in RPM, and then you move it back up to the right until you don't hear that change in RPM. That's your max throttle. When you're done with this, you turn this back off and you're all set. Then we move down to gear settings. Say that I'm doing my Logo 600. I want 2250 for my maximum head speed. My gear ratio is 9.58. That's my 700E. And 2200 for my head speed. And then sensor configuration. On an electric, you will be using a sensor, a phase sensor, for example, on a Hyperion phase sensor. And what you do here is you take your motor pole count. So for example, a Scorpion motor that's 10 poles, you would divide the 10 poles by 2 and you would enter that here. So you'd have 5. If you had an 8 pole motor, you would divide that by 2 and you would end up with a number 4 here. And then at that point, you're pretty much done. Now, the way the electric governor works is you use your throttle curves. So what you do is you have a throttle curve that starts with 0 at the bottom, and then it jumps all the way up, for example, to 90. So if you have a 5-point throttle curve, you would be a 0, 90, 90, 90, and 90. Now, that 0 is still in the VBar. Throttle is off. Don't start the motor. Everything needs to be off. As soon as it starts to spool up and you get to that 90 is going to translate into a certain speed. And that head speed you will see right here on the right hand side. Okay? If you enter 100 on your throttle curve, then you'll end up with the head speed that you've entered here for max head speed, in this case 2200. Now, the VBar reads this information in 2 different ways. What it's looking for is a throttle signal that goes all the way from -100 to +100. So anything that is at -100 is throttle off, no auto rotation bailout, slow spool up. Anything that is from -100 to -90% is motor off. Anything that is from -90% to 0 is motor off with auto rotation bailout on. And anything that is from 0 to 100 is throttle on with governor mode on. So with this being said, my throttle curve here looks at in normal mode looks like 0, and it jumps all the way up to 90, 90, 90, 90. In idle up 1, my throttle curve is, say, 95 straight across, and in idle up 2 is, say, 100 straight across. My throttle curve and throttle hold looks like 25% all the way across. So what that does is that when I hit throttle hold, it actually enables the bailout for the auto rotation. And you enable that, of course, here. Going back to the main governor screen, this is your gain again for electrics. 30 seems to work well, as that's the default. And then usually for electrics on the minimum governor, we recommend about -70 to -75%. And if your motor's overspeeding, you can even increase this a little more to, say, -80, for example. And then this center button here will show you curves. And these curves only will take over if something happens to the governor, to the sensor. Otherwise, your system is going by the curves on your transmitter, of course.
Hey, how y'all doing? Brother Rick here at Learning the Ways at Bobby Watts Repair and Research and Development Facility. We want to discuss the advantages and disadvantages of Flybar and Flybarless systems. The biggest advantage of the Flybar is that if it's not broke, don't fix it. And since that stuff works, why would you want to use anything else, the Flybarless stuff? I mean, unless you want to take a computer and a laptop computer and a big telephone, big thick fucking telephone book of information along with it, and then get on the internet and cross-reference all the different parameters and the settings and all the different things you got to learn on there to be able to fix it. And remember, that's going to change every minute too, because there's a firmware upgrade coming, and that, you know, if you don't have that new firmware, you're shit out of luck. Your big machine's going in. And the way I look at it, I have the Flybar on there, and that's easy for me because I can just set it up mechanically and everything works. But everybody's into this Flybarless stuff now. But what I understand too, if you don't have the Flybarless stuff, you're not that good of a pilot. And I'll probably never become a good pilot because I don't have the Flybarless equipment. So I mean, and it does make you a better pilot because you know you learn things and learn how to, I mean, you need some damn, like I don't have any with me now, but I have like 20 different kinds of two-sided tape. I've got 20 different sides of two-sided tape, and I've got little metal plates to make sure everything's hooked down right, and I've got straps to make sure it's all strapped. Don't get any vibration in there, because if you get some vibration in there, you're done. You're done with that shit. Your little thing's gonna glitch, and then probably it's gonna fly perfectly for this second. Then when you turn and do a different move at a different speed, then it's gonna oscillate, and then it's gonna have all kind of problems, and then it's just stuff like that. So I mean, if you want to try to do the best thing you can with it, and probably just stick with the original Flybar thing, and not like for me, I would never buy one. Just wouldn't fool with it. It's just how I stick with what works, not with what needs to be worked on. And till next time, take care.
Okay, let's talk a little bit about bank switching. Bank switching is something that only VBar has. No other Flybarless systems have this feature, and it's a really, really nice feature. This is only available with the Pro version of the software. If you look at the right hand side of the software, you see where it says active bank selection, and generally you will see it that is set to bank 0. So you have bank 0, bank 1, bank 2, bank 3, or bank 0, 1, 2, 3. Basically, you can select a bank. Every bank is basically a completely different set of rules or set of settings on the software. Let's say I'm on bank 1, for example. If I want to move gyro gain all the way up and agility all the way down, these settings are now stored in bank 1. If I go back to bank 0, you'll see how it goes back to where it was. So with this being said, you can have helicopter that flies completely different on every bank. I mean, and you can get creative, and you can even make changes here in the advanced section of the main rotor and tail rotor, you can have a bank that has 0 paddle simulation, so paddle simulation is turned off. You can have a bank that has 80 paddle simulation, but on that bank you might have a slower tail response. I mean, the possibilities are limitless. So basically the way that you operate this is you either do it manually here through the software, you select the bank you want, you make your changes, and that's how you fly. Or you can go ahead and do it with your radio. To do it with the radio, what we do is we go to setup, and then we go to receiver, and we look at the assignments for the channel. Generally you want to use the aux gyro channel. I have it assigned to channel 5. Channel 5 on Spectrum is my gear channel. So with this being said, what we do here is we go to the transmitter, and on my DX8 I'm going to the gyro screen, and I'm setting positions here that are controlled via the gear channel and modified by the switch aileron DR dual rates, which is this switch right here. So what I do here is I come up here and I start picking numbers. So ideally the bottom of the range is -100, right? And the top of the range is +100. Because I only have 3 positions right here, I'm only going to be able to use 3 banks. So I'm not going to be able to use all of the 4 banks, 0, 1, 2, and 3. I'll only be able to use 0, 1, and 2, or 0, 2, and 3. So what we do here is once we have these numbers selected, we toggle that switch that we assign, and we look at aux gyro, and as you can see it's moving all the way down to all the way up. So that means that's working. So we exit this, we go back to the main screen, and instead of selecting bank 1 here, for example, I'm going to select bank 0, 1, 2, 3. What this does is this looks at the input from that channel, which in this case is channel 5, and if it sees that input changing from -100 to +100, it'll modify the bank here. It'll change it from 0 to 1 to 2 to 3. So right now on my transmitter I have -100. If I flip the switch, I have -40. Wrong switch. -40. Now, if you look at the software, it's changed. -40 is changing to bank 1. I can modify this number and keep, say, increasing it, and it'll go back to 0. I can go the other way, and I'm back to 1. So once you find 1 there, then you move to the next one, and you move the switch again. Now it's bank 3. Well, I'm jumping from 1 to 3. That's not a big deal. But I'm going to go back here until I see 2. So now we have bank 0, bank 1, and it usually takes a little bit for it to show you the change in the computer, and bank 2. Now, something extremely important here is make sure you go to the advanced menu here, and then you tell it, so when you set up your helicopter, you set it up in bank 0 more than likely. Be very, very careful, because if you switch banks and you have not copied these things, you're going to have a setup that might not even fly your helicopter. Your servos might be reversed. Everything might be completely screwed up. So be very, very careful before you start playing with these. Make sure you're in the bank that you started editing and setting up your software in, which is 99.999% of the time bank 0. And then make sure you're selected here at bank 0. Make sure that you copy editing bank to all. Click on do. Starts the copy procedure. Okay. Now all my banks are exactly the same. So I know I have a flyable helicopter, an airworthy helicopter on all my banks. So now I flip my switch from 0 to 1. Now I can start making changes. Say for bank 1, I want to change from vivid to precise. I want to drop my agility down to, let's say, 80. And I want a little bit slower tail. So that's my bank 1. And now for my bank 2, let's say I want a crazy setup. Vivid, I want 135 here on my agility, and I want a tail that's like 130. And then for this bank, I also want to increase my paddle simulation to like 60. This is a crazy setup right here. So now I have my 3 banks configured, 0, 1, and 2. So you can see if I go back to my bank 0, everything goes back to where it was. This is really, really cool for people that want to have different settings for different practices, or modes. For example, I know the FAI guys are not allowed to fly Flybarless, but this is a great tool for FAI guys that want completely different settings for, say, hovering than the settings that they want for upstairs flying. So that is it for bank switching.
All right, very first flight with your VBar Flybarless system. With any other Flybarless system, but this is VBar specific. First thing you want to do when you take off is just bring the helicopter into hover. Nothing fancy, just a simple hover. And make sure that the helicopter is trimmed properly. So you can see here, like I'm pretty much almost hands off on the right hand side. And the helicopter's not drifting, not doing anything. It's kind of moving a little bit with the wind. But as you can see, I'm almost completely hands off. That's the first thing you want to do. If you have vibrations or anything like that, the helicopter's not going to feel trim. It might be pulling to one side or another. That's a typical symptom of bad vibrations on your helicopter. I have not ever experienced that, but I've seen people that have like badly bent like main shafts or spindle shafts or tail rotor shafts that can see that. Second thing is we're going to go into basic forward flight here. Just feel it out. You know, I mean, there's no reason why the Flybarless system should feel unnatural to you. You know, back in the day with the older units and stuff, you know, some of them were really weird feeling and stuff. These new units, you know, the Mikado, the Futaba, the Curtis, you know, even the B-Stacks, they all feel pretty good, especially the ones with the latest updates. I hear that the new Align 3GX is also pretty good. Now, tendencies that you want to look for. I'm going to go ahead and do some forward flight. I hope Bobby can keep up with me here. I'm going to do some just basic fast forward flight. That's a good test that you can do. Just put it into basic forward flight with a lot of speed. You want to check this out. Make sure there's no weird like tendencies. You don't want the helicopter to like feel pitchy or squarely on you. You want it to just track straight. VBar is great at that. Great. Another feature specific of the VBar that you want to make sure that you kind of want to get a feel for is the fact that if you turn on the paddle simulation, this feel here around center is very, very fast. I have 40%. See, when I pop the helicopter, it almost pops like a Flybar machine. So play with that. You have to give it bursts of elevator or aileron to feel how much the paddle sim is doing for you. The last thing you want to check, not only on the VBar but any Flybarless system, is you want to go ahead and peg the elevator and do traveling flips if you can. You don't want it to speed up or slow down. A lot of the older systems had this bad tendency where when you would travel applying full elevator, for example, you would kind of feel the system speed up violently all by itself without you giving it any input. So that is just something to keep in mind. It's interesting to check that when you fly your VBar for the first time. Other than that, just common sense. If you're doing, for example, just forward flight and you feel that the helicopter it actually feels very locked in, but for example, say that you give it a little bit of elevator and it wants to kind of pull into sort of a heart wall or something, you might have too much gain. Drop the gain on your rotor. If it feels too loose, like it's on roller skates or something, then go ahead and increase your gain on the rotor. Same with the tail. Tail is just like any other tail gyro. Just use your tail gain as you guys use it on your regular tail gyro. So. Hey guys, we're here with Ernie Fritz and Sean Sullivan. These guys work at Ready Heli. If you guys don't know what Ready Heli is, you have been living under a rock. Ready Heli is the exclusive distributor, or retailer, I guess you could say, for Mikado in the United States. And this episode is all about Mikado. This is a guy here that hated Flybarless systems. He tried the Mikado and he fell in love with it. Ernie's been flying it since he started working for Ready Heli a couple, 2-3 years ago, whatever. And just basically showing their faces, because if you guys have a problem with the VBar, one of these guys more than likely will help you out. Ernie's pretty much the head of technical support for Mikado in the United States. So he handles everything that has to do with RMAs and all kinds of stuff. But very briefly, what do you think is an advantage? Like why would you recommend V-Bar over any other Flybarless system? Like, don't even get into technical stuff. Just think of a couple of quick reasons why you would prefer V-Bar.
I like the stability of the V-Bar. It kind of takes out all the inherent problems that you see with traditional fly bars, like corkscrewing out of loops and just drifting in hovers and stuff like that. It's kind of like a heading a whole gyro for the head, if you will. It's very nice.
Cool. Sean, you've been flying Flybarless now and the V-Bar. What do you think of it? Is it awesome or what?
I think it's taken my flying a whole lot further than it was. When I was flying Flybar machines, I don't want to say the machine was holding me back, but I've progressed a lot in the last year that I've been flying it.
Cool. So just an introduction to Sean Sullivan and Ernie Fritz, again, from Ready Heli. Don't be that guy that starts sending emails asking for dumb questions. Watch this video. It's a long video. It explains everything you need to know. Go to YouTube. Look at Mr. Mel's videos as well before you email these guys. These guys have a lot of work to do. So if you have a legitimate problem, they'll be more than pleased to help you out. So, yeah. Okay, guys, this is it for today's episode. Everything that you need to know about V-Bars. And the purpose of this episode was to kind of show you an overview of what the V-Bar was all about. Everything from the price to all the features that it has to the ease of setup and everything else. And I think I did a pretty decent job when it comes to giving you a fair overview of the product. But once again, if you want detailed, specific instructions on how to set things up, again, visit Mr. Mel's YouTube channel and watch his videos. He has a lot of useful information there. But in the show notes under the main post, I'm going to actually put a few V-Bar files that I personally fly. I will also in the future make these files available for download via my own website, which is bertrc.com, bertrc.com. When you take one of these files, you open your V-Bar software and you load the files into the software. Please triple, quadruple check everything. Don't assume that this is because this is a file that I'm flying that is airworthy and that you can just load into your system and go fly. Make sure that everything is set up correctly, because a lot of times, depending on the radio system you're using, your channel assignments might be different, your endpoints might be different. I mean, there's a lot of stuff that you have to go through. But use my files as a good foundation or a base to start your setup with. So again, hope you enjoy this, and I guess we'll see you on the next episode of SmackTalk. Dang, it's like 100 degrees.
I'm a survivor.
Survivor of what?
What's he saying? What are you?
I'll pull it out of my ass. I don't have show notes. I'm the most disorganized person ever. I don't know.
The question is, what's he gonna pull out of his ass?
Get out of my ass last minute. We're here with two of the